Super excited for this one. This board, been waiting for it for a little while now. This is the all new Starboard Airline Sprint. Pretty excited about this one, I'm not gonna lie. Known about it for a little while, they've arrived finally, and yeah, it's a superb bit of kit. The reason why I've been so excited about this is, for me personally, I've been paddling a Starboard Airline now for probably a couple of years. More recently in the last year, just a little bit more and more distance events personally is kind of stuff I've been doing. And the Airline for me is, well, it's one of, if not probably the best 14-foot race inflatable out there in the marketplace. The simple reason for that is when you get to boards of this length and inflatable, and as they come down in width, rigidity over their entire waterline length becomes harder and harder to achieve just from the drop stitch material. Regardless as to how good that drop stitch material is, it just becomes harder and harder to end up with a stiff board and structure. Now, Starboard are one of really only two brands in the marketplace that have kind of come up with a solution to that, to actually make the board more rigid over its entire waterline length. And that's probably down to the simplest one out there in terms of the Airline technology. So what is the Airline? Well, in the crudest, simplest possible way, it is a aramid fiber rope that runs from the nose of the board, heads all the way over this purpose-built nose cone that fits and has a small channel in it, and then it runs on the entire underside of the board all the way back to the fin box. The great thing with that system is it actually tightens out like it's almost like a tightrope. As it kind of goes on, it tightens out the entire length of the board and it makes it exceptionally rigid. Rigidity in a board like this, as an inflatable, well, it's as close as you're going to get to a hard board with all of the merits and advantages that an inflatable board has with it. So that's durability, that's transportability, albeit the Airline has a slight quirk with that, and I'll come on to that in a second. But yeah, overall, Starboard Airline, big go-to for me. We've long had as well with the Starboard Airline lineup, much like Starboard have in their composite race boards, we have the All-Star, the Sprint, and now, well, also the Ace, which is their downwind dedicated board. With the Airline technology, we've only ever had an All-Star. So the All-Star sits within Starboard's raceboard makeup really as their kind of all-water, all performing, all conquering, that's certainly their most successful and arguably the most successful race board ever made out there in the market. And it's that kind of merits that is drawn on from that board, that all water aspect, has crossed over into that performance inflatable. This though, the Sprint, really leans towards more flat water bias. So it is definitely a much flatter, tighter rocker line that we see in the board. It carries over some of the composite characteristics that we see in the Sprint in terms of a much narrower profile in the nose that leads down towards a slightly wider tail. But we'll run through that all in just a second. For me though, the Sprint, well, with them releasing the Airline Sprint, that does mean Starboard in their wisdom have done away with the All-Star that I've known and loved for the last couple of years. So let's talk around the differences on this board. As you kind of start off at the nose and we'll run down to the tail as we do in all of our videos here at the Sup Company, for me the big stark difference in the nose is this big reduction in width. Now Starboard on the composite Sprint went last year towards an exceptionally aggressive, almost knife-like nose on the composite board Sprint. Now, while you can't achieve that same aggressive kind of profile on an inflatable board, on here they have cut down the overall width in the nose section, and it runs a very much finer width all the way down to the main standing area in the board. Initially, for me, given the all-water conditions that I've kind of been paddling in, it was a concern. I was concerned that stability would be reduced a fair amount. Now, Starboard, fair play to them and their design team, because you've got to remember this isn't their first rodeo by any stretch. They knew that, and what they've gone and done is they've made a very, very generous wide tail, and it's almost a very parallel outline from almost the chest of the board. If you imagine, these are the shoulders up here, and we're working our way down the body of the board all the way back to here. So around the chest, there's this width, and this width pretty parallel all the way down towards the tail of the board. So there is a lot of stability down here, and particularly when you're on the tail. But it is noticeable that there is less stability in the nose of this board. But importantly, there is significantly less drag in this board. For me, I was jumping around with the Starboard Airline from around the 28 width to the 26 and moving between those really depending on the event and the type of paddling I was doing. On this board, well, they've moved the width slightly. So you've got a 29 Sprint, a 27, a 25.5 and a 24. To be honest with you, on the Airline Sprint 24, I wouldn't even consider it. It is a arrow-like flat water, purely only board, 24 inches wide and inflatable. It's going to be hard work. I think the 25.5, haven't paddled it as yet, but flat water, dedicated events, then yeah, do you know what? If it's an endurance type event, I'll definitely be on a board like that, even at 91, 92 kilos as I am. But for me though, this will be the go-to board. This will be the 27 wide that I'll go to. I think the 29 will work for a lot of people. As a direct comparison between my experiences on the All-Star Airline compared to this board, so the 28 All-Star Airline compared to this Sprint at 27, it is less stable. Not by masses though, and I would say that arguably the gains that you get in terms of performance, particularly in flat water, and it is still stable in some good chop. We've been out and played with it a little while now. It is still stable. It's still intuitive underfoot, and it's still really, really rewarding to paddle, certainly on the flat. So look, let's work as we do down the board a little bit further then. So you've got these stringers that run over the length of the board as well. These help tighten it up. This is a carbon stringer, as Starboard call it. It doesn't impact up on rolling on the board though, but it does tighten up the overall structure. A nice cargo net. Initially in the airlines, way back when they first introduced, this wasn't part of the board. But these now for touring, and particularly in the UK, so events like the Trent 100, arguably the best event in the UK, an airline Sprint, and having this bungee system on it really is just an absolute godsend. It makes the board work really as a fast touring board as well. So think of it like a GT car in a sense. Nice carry handle, so if you are beach starting, you've got this option that you can get in the water much quicker. And you end up then though down onto this diamond cut crocodile skin finished deck pad. Really like it, really comfortable underfoot. What is worth noting though are these EVA cutouts on the side of the board. These just give a lot of security and allow you to have a lot of confidence to make full use of the width of this board. Over a period of time, when paddling distance, if I was being a little bit picky, the slight raises here under the EVA deck pad itself, yeah, you find yourself, you've got to move your feet around every now and again, otherwise you end up with some aching kind of kicking in over the distances. But other than that, they're well worth themselves being there. They do come at a slight price though, particularly with portability of this board. So when you pack this board up, it drops into not what I would call a traditional shaped board bag. It drops into a square shaped board bag as opposed to a rectangular board bag. Having traveled a little bit around, particularly in France with an airline in that square board bag, everyone else I've traveled with, I have to kind of do a sideways shuffle through a doorway as opposed to walk straight through. You do look a little bit like SpongeBob SquarePants from the back. And you certainly stand out when you're walking around with one on your back. But it's a small price to pay really for the security that these EVA sections give you. They are notably as well smaller on the Sprint. The Airline was about 3 to 4 inches slightly longer. But yeah, you are basically, this is your main standing area within the board. As we work our way back down though, that deck pad, generous, covers the entire area, but you end up with a really, really big kick pad on the tail of this board, and it is very, very stable underfoot. I think the B-roll that we've got there is Tom paddling the board out, and you can see just how stable it is underfoot as Tom takes the board and kind of puts it through some tail turns. But look, let's take the board as we do and roll it over. So you can now see on the entire underside of the board that airline system, so that line running all the way from the nose, and it's under this black cover here. Again, it's a carbon stringer, so it's providing more rigidity within the board. And that runs all the way down to the fin box on the tail of this board. US fin box means that you can swap it out for other third-party aftermarket fins if needs be, but this board comes with the net positive Race 23 fin. I really like it, to be honest with you. Nice, stable, provides a lot of tracking. It's exceptionally long and deep, and that really does aid the tracking on this board. The tail itself though, very square. So now you can really see that overall outline shape, just how fine or how much finer that nose section is. But then very, very quickly, probably about, you know, a good third of the way down the board, just how that width fills out and runs all the way down towards the tail. So look, there you have it. If you are after a super, super efficient, slightly flat water bias, but very capable in the chop, performance inflatable that is exceptionally rewarding to paddle, I think if you're there at the 29-inch width, it would make a fantastic touring board as well. 29 will still go around a race course at a decent lick. Whereas the 27, I think probably the majority of people looking to race and do big distance events in the UK, the 27 is probably the way that you're going to go. And if you are a slightly lighter rider, I suggest around 85 kilos, maybe less than that. And flat water events, the 25.5 is the way to go. But yeah, Starboard, Airline, Sprint, I'll definitely be seeing you on the water on this board this year. Thanks for watching our video. If you've got any questions about what you've seen, why not give us a call in the shop or head over to thesupco.com. To stay up to date though with all of our videos, well, make sure you subscribe up here and hit the notification bell. But to see our next video, well, take a look up here.